First of all, thank you so much for participating in the project Oral Narratives of Latinos in Ohio. Today is Friday, August 14th, 2020. Can we start with your full name, please?
Jessica Cáceres or Jessica Cáceres.
Okay. Tell me where you were born and where you grew up.
I grew up in Lebanon, Ohio, which is a rural suburb of Cincinnati. It's still like 45 minutes out. Mm-hmm. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would say in Lebanon there were very few people of color or Latinos there in the schools growing up.
Okay. What is your heritage?
My mom is from Puerto Rico and my dad is from Colombia, and they met in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about childhood. What was it like to grow up in Lebanon as a Latina in a Latino family?
Mm-hmm. I think, as I mentioned, like in school, there weren't too many other Latino families, but my parents definitely had a network. So I feel like growing up, they had a lot more Colombian friends, or I would always remember going to more of like the Colombian parties and get-togethers at like a neighborhood clubhouse sort of deal. And then I feel like as we got older, I don't know if their friend group just shifted or what, but definitely hanging out more with the Puerto Rican families. But always a mix of all different Latinos, not necessarily just Puerto Rican and Colombians, but everyone.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have one older brother and one older sister.
Mm-hmm. So you're the youngest?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Tell me about childhood. What was it like? What things did you do together as siblings? What kind of games or activities did you have growing up?
I mean, I think the three of us were really close. We would always play like board games or just play outside. Trying to think of, I don't know. But I would say, yeah, the three of us were very close. Okay. I do know that I think I only celebrated my first birthday in Florida, and for the most part, my family has been in Ohio. But just seeing home videos of my brother and sister, they're always speaking in Spanish primarily, and I'm just the little baby there, like pointing at things that I'm always kind of silent in the videos, and that by the time I came around, I learned both Spanish and English, but I think that their Spanish was a little bit better because they only had each other and my parents talking to them, whereas then they were older, they knew English as well. So I kind of picked it up in a different way.
Do you have any extended family here from both sides of the family?
My aunt, actually, from Puerto Rico, lives next door. And then the rest of the family is mostly in Puerto Rico or Colombia. We do have some of the Colombian family is in Canada and Toronto now.
So growing up with your siblings, or as a family, did you ever visit those places like Colombia or Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I think we tried to go as often as we could, but we would go to, either visit both sides. Yes.
What kind of things did you get to do there that were maybe different than here?
I'm trying to, I know with the Colombian side, I always wanted to go to different artesanías and kind of like see the different little markets. But I feel like it was you're mostly there to see the family. So always large gatherings. For example, I remember at my grandma in Puerto Rico's side, in sort of it's not like the garage, but there's like that gated area. And then into the house, like where everyone can gather, sort of inside, outside, but really just seeing a lot of family members.
The same in Puerto Rico.
So that was the Puerto Rican side. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, in Puerto Rico, going to El Yunque and going to the beach. In Colombia, I remember we once went to Parque Tayrona all together. I mean, so also enjoying family and kind of like mini vacation of, okay, well, we're here, so we should go to the beach, right?
Great.
But it was often around the holidays, around Christmas, so.
What do your parents do?
So my mom teaches ESOL for adults, and my dad is a doctor.
how did they maintain, or how did then when you were a child, but even now, how do they keep some of the traditions from each of their country? And so what kind of things did you learn from them, from your Puerto Rican side and your Colombian side?
Mm-hmm. I mean, going off of the holidays, we did both novenas, which are a Colombian tradition, and parrandas. So we had those things with just sort of family friends here in the U.S. And then for New Year's, there's a Colombian tradition of el año viejo, where you essentially burn an effigy. So we would always celebrate New Year's with family and have that sort of bonfire and those traditions of like, if you stomp on $1, that means you'll have money in the new year. If you bring your suitcase, we would always do the suitcase one. Like if you bring your suitcase around the corner, that means you're going to travel in the new year. So those were just some simple things. And then Puerto Rico, Los Reyes, we would always celebrate that. So we would stick a shoebox with some hay for the camels to come, and the Los Tres Reyes would bring you a small gift.
So you mentioned you grew up speaking English and Spanish. And tell me about that. Did you use the language then growing up in your family, and how do you use it now?
Yeah, I mean, my parents always speak to us in Spanish, and I think we would just respond in Spanglish or English or whatever that might be, full Spanish. But I think definitely as we got older, I would always respond in English. But I know there were certain words, as I mentioned, a suitcase. It's like, when are you talking to your friends about a suitcase? That I would always call it a maleta, like just speaking in English and then throwing in my maleta right there. That it's like, I was probably a little too old before I learned the word for a suitcase, but you're likely never traveling without your family or with just English speakers. So certain things like that I might not have known what the English words were. But yeah, I think I've learned both, and I would say I don't get to use my Spanish as much, but I definitely try to. I think if anything, I just feel a little like it's not up to par, but I do need to practice it well. And I do fully understand. I think I just second guess myself speaking.
Did you ever experience anything negative in relation to speaking Spanish? Either you or maybe you witnessed your siblings. Was there anything negative associated with the language itself?
I can't remember like a specific instance, but I mean, I remember taking once my grandma and my sister to the store and kind of like getting some looks, but never anything super outwardly aggressive or negative in that way. And I think that my friends might have, like, in high school especially, repeated certain words my mom said due to her accent and things like that. But I don't think there were, like, outright super negative experiences.
Did you ever witness your parents being targeted because maybe, I don't know if your parents have a non-native English speaker accent, were they ever targeted because of that?
I mean, I think that my mom has definitely taught me to sort of always look your best and act professionally, even if it's something as simple as making a return at a store, because people are going to second guess those things because of the way, if she has darker skin and black hair and a thick accent. So I think that's something that's ingrained in me. If it's like, okay, if I'm going to a doctor's office or some sort of government building, or simply just making a return, that I should make sure I'm 100%, that they will take what I'm saying seriously and make sure it gets done. So I think that has happened. And I mean, thinking of, this isn't necessarily the accent, but just like racial profiling. When my uncle was here once, who is also darker skin, black hair. He was driving my dad's old Toyota Corolla, who my dad thought he'd be cool and put some racing stripes on the car. And then he was pulled over by the cops, and they asked for his license. And as a Puerto Rican citizen, you are a U.S. citizen. So you don't need a special license from California to Ohio. You can drive here, like if you're just visiting, whatever. So same thing from Puerto Rico. But this officer wrote him a ticket, and we had to go to court and sort of do this whole thing, this song and dance, when really it's like, no, the officer didn't know that he is allowed. And the reason he was pulled over, also, it's like, it wasn't a speeding ticket. It was just, we're profiling you based on this car and what you look like.
Tell me about a little bit more about your experiences with Spanish. Did you get to use it a lot when you went to visit these different places like Colombia and Puerto Rico, or when you're speaking with family members other than your mom and dad?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely tried to, but as I mentioned, as a young kid, that I was the one pointing at things and my siblings would grab them. So I think maybe not having that full confidence yet, that my siblings would often speak for me in these scenarios as well, even as I got older, that I was kind of a bit more shy to use my Spanish and just to speak up in general. But yes, I would say yes, when I call my cousin for his birthday or something like that, it's definitely always in Spanish.
Tell me about your experiences in school. What was it like going to school as maybe the only or one of the only students that were not white, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember super negative experiences, but apparently I was very young. I think my sister it may have been like in kindergarten or something, but my sister remembers, and so does my mom. They remember this vividly of somebody calling me the N-word, and that my sister pinched the kid really hard. But again, like, I don't really recall that instance, but I think for them it's like sort of ingrained, they definitely remember this instance, but just there not even being, like I said, too many people of color. So yeah, I don't know. We were different, but we ended up for like Catholic school, or for grade school, we went to Catholic school, and then the public school for high school. So I don't know if that also helped shelter us in any way of being in smaller classes.
Wait, I had a question. Sorry. Did you grow up always sort of being proud and understanding who you were as a Latina, being part of a Latina family? Was that always part of maybe your pride?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always loved my family and how outgoing and personable they were. I remember once my parents were dancing at maybe like at a restaurant or something, like salsa dancing, and I wasn't on the dance floor, but somebody like, oh God, there weren't like too many people dancing, like a handful, like, oh, like they said that they would be embarrassed. Now I was like, why am I embarrassed? They're great dancers, that I'm like, yeah, like they're going for it. So I don't think now, wait, can you repeat the question?
Just being proud of being Latina.
Yeah, so I don't think in that way I knew we were different, and I loved all of those parts of it. But I do think that I think a lot of Latinos experience this of kind of finding my own place in that, of that I'm not the immigrant here. I'm not like the fluent. Well, I am fluent, but just not as fluent as others. So I think kind of solidifying my place, I would say that the Latina Mentoring Academy, which was after college, actually helped me a lot. Just kind of gain my own confidence in where I am, that it is enough being myself.
So you came to Ohio State, right? You graduated from Ohio State. What was your degree in?
Environmental science.
Okay. What was your experience like being a college student? Were you part of Latino organizations? Did you get involved in things like that here?
And I think that's where I was trying to sort of navigate those things that I once showed up to a Latino student org, and I was kind of like, okay, well, there's the Puerto Rican Student Association, but I was born here. I'm not from Puerto Rico, so do I really like fit in with them, or where exactly do I fit? So I ended up joining Laser, which helps mentor students in high school, and I had a really good experience with that. But there was a direct action. It wasn't a sort of social club, it's like, here you go, you can volunteer and you're a part of this. So I enjoyed that experience. And then I think I've, as I mentioned, been seeking out that connection after now kind of more fully knowing my place. I've definitely been searching for that. And with the OSU Latinx Alumni Society, we're trying to do that as well.
Great. Tell me about some of the work that you're doing or that you have done either as a student or in your young professional life that you're starting now.
Just
work related, or were you part of any research here at OSU? Something like that.
Yeah. I did do some soil research. It was there was a community garden that was close to campus, and I was volunteering there, and then they had some like oil sheens show up. So I did learn a little bit about soil sampling, bioremediation in that way. So that was interesting to do something, but it was I feel like in trying to find research and navigate OSU, that was something that I kind of had to self-start. But
is that related to the work that you do now as a professional?
So it's still related to the environmental science aspects of things. So now I might not be in the field as I was before, but when I started at Ohio EPA, I started as a harmful algae bloom intern, so I was out there sampling the water, but now I help small businesses figure out all of the rules and regulations.
So you mentioned the Latina Mentoring Academy. Tell me why you chose to participate in that, and how did it help you grow as a young professional?
I think I was looking for some sort of professional development to continue learning, and I think I'm trying to remember how exactly I learned about it. It may have been like an interview with Lair on I think it was like Dímelo Columbus, but it just seemed like something that you could find that community, you could build those leadership skills. So I was attracted to both of those things. And then in going through it, I definitely found people that are like me, kind of caught between both places. And it was really fulfilling, just the community aspect of, as I mentioned, my parents have their whole community in Cincinnati. So kind of me building that Latino community for myself. So I think that was something that was really fulfilling. And then just the leadership skills as well of like, okay, here's some public speaking tips and financial management, whatever that might be. So making friends, connecting with the community, and sort of giving back.
Right. Tell me about, well, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? We're dealing with COVID-19. And I have some questions related to that. When and how did you first find out about the pandemic, and what kind of things worried you about that?
I mean, I think when it first started, what was it, in January or February, everyone was we were all worrying, wondering, is this as much of a big deal as it is? So I started to see it in the news and elsewhere. And I know my friends and I had taken a short trip in February, sort of right before this whole lockdown to visit our other friends in Austin, Texas, and we all were kind of questioning, like, is this a big deal? What's going on? And then we come back, and then there's the state kind of shut down, and there's no Arnold, there's no big music festivals, everything is canceled. So I do think it kind of came as a surprise of how severe it was going to be, but I am glad that Ohio took all those precautions. And then someone working for the state, we were never allowed to work from home, telecommuting, all of those things. It was kind of like you put in your time in the office or else you are not working. So that was a really rough transition, and I think that it felt kind of like the old days of, like, our director did an announcement, instead of gathering our whole Ohio EPA into a conference room or something like that, right? You're supposed to keep your distance. So she made an announcement, wanted all of the staff on, like, a phone call. So it was like, everyone, like, stay in your individual desks. But we were all, like, kind of on our phones. So it felt like the whole, like, radio, like, getting the news from the radio and kind of hearing our next steps of, like, we're packing up in the next 2 days and not coming back. So I think that was kind of interesting, just the way it all went down. Even just, like, grabbing plants and the things people are grabbing around the office. And I know at the beginning of all this, I was like, oh man, in hazardous waste, they have, like, those masks and we have a lot of this safety equipment. I was like, I should have snatched some of it. I had that thought. But I know as things started, as hospitals needed those PPE, the personal protective gear, supplies, that Ohio EPA, they actually asked other state agencies to donate the extra supplies that they had. So I'm saying, good thing I didn't try to sneak any supplies. They got them to the Department of Public Health, and I think the Department of Public Health then distributed those to where they needed them.
Who in your family has been most impacted by the pandemic or by all the changes that we've gone through?
I mean, I think we've all been affected in our own ways. But so my brother is currently in Colombia, and he had just moved there in December. So something like him visiting us to come back and be with family now, that can't happen for a decent amount of time. And the situation there has been much more severe of the lockdown, whereas, like, in the United States, you can still go on walks, you can still do a lot of your regular activities. But they have certain rules, like they have a rule in Bogota called pico y placa, to regulate traffic during rush hour. And they've installed rules like that for going to the grocery store. So, like, if you're the equivalent of, like, your social security number, if it ends in an even or odd number, you can go on these days, etc. And then, so my grandpa's health has also not been the best right now. And then my dad is trying to figure out, how does he get there? How can he help from afar? If he can't fly, there's no flights right now. What can we do? So he's kind of trying to navigate that. And I know he put in some requests with the consulate. And he bought a ticket in September, assuming that things, right now, there's nothing banning it in September. It's only, like, for August. So we'll see if the flights are open then. Yeah.
What kind of things? So you said your one of the big changes that you experienced was you had to work from home. So what kind of activities have changed for you? How have you adapted to this new changes, aside from, the work environment, but also maybe social or other activities that you were involved in? How has that changed, and how are you managing with that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the working from home, I've been lucky, and I know I'm privileged to have that ability. But yeah, it's definitely changed social things and otherwise. So I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and my boyfriend and I are both working from home. So he's at the dining room table and I'm in like a nook area, that we're both kind of like trying to keep our distance, but we're always, and like have our own little office area, but we're always like about 6 feet away from each other at all times, living in a small apartment. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, sorry.
What other social changes or?
Yeah, I always did ceramics at the Cultural Arts Center on Mondays, and so that has also been canceled. At the beginning of this, my class, or at least my table, we were doing Zoom calls, so I was doing some ceramics at home, but then it's like if I don't have access to a kiln and to all of these things, that kind of died off and morphed into a like craft night that we would kind of Zoom and do whatever crafts. Like some people would be painting, others sewing, whatever that might be. So I think that was good. While everything was definitely locked down, to have some sort of social outlet in the beginning. Yeah, but I think in general it's also made us, my, I guess, social sphere tighten up, that I feel like it's only the close friends that I see or reach out to. It's going to take more effort to reach out to those people that might be on the periphery. But really the ones I've seen are my close friends that we're still like limiting that impact and touch.
Right. Have you ever felt, I don't know, anxiety or uncertainty about this situation? Sort of what's next? What's going to happen? How are things changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things are uncertain. So that's only natural to have those feelings. Right. I also think with our political situations, the fact that our government isn't encouraging the scientific protocols, that it's very worrying to know that half of America might not follow these things or might not get a vaccine if it were to come out. So I think all of those things are worrying, and especially what I said, if it's limiting then our access to other family members. Yeah, I think it's just kind of, we're in an unsure, unprecedented time.
Right. Do you feel that the government has handled this situation appropriately, especially, and I'm asking specifically either for the Latino community or for immigrants? Have they been properly informed, cared for?
Yeah. I know that Ochla has been translating a lot of the governor's briefings. I don't know if that happened directly in the beginning, and I don't know if there has been as much outreach to the communities as there could have been. I think it's happening now, but I know certain members of the Latino community who like don't own masks yet, and I'm kind of like, I think to me, I'm like, oh yeah, you should definitely get one and wear one. So I don't know. I think we could be doing a better job, but it is, I think, government from the top's job. I think Ohio, I'm thankful that DeWine and Dr. Amy Acton shut things down when they did. But we'll see how things play out.
So this comment you said about some people not having masks or access, do you think is a personal choice, or is it that we need to do more to provide this sort of PPE to our community?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it might be certain people that don't watch the news all the time or aren't as plugged in and kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess I should. That maybe we didn't do a good, or the public, I guess, has not done a good enough job of like educating those folks. So I think there's that aspect of it, but then there's also Latinos love community and love being together. So then I also know individuals that are still trying, or when they get together, they still like hug and kiss each other, and but then they'll like put on their masks at certain things, and I'm like, I don't know if you fully get it, you know. Like that they're kind of on both sides of like, oh, well, I wear my mask when I go to church and when I do XYZ, but then I'm having a gathering and I'm hugging and kissing my guests as they come in the door. And I'm like, well, I don't think that matches up. So I don't know. I think it's a mix of both. It's that maybe the community, it can be more difficult in certain ways to kind of isolate each other and not have those physical touch, because we do all, every time I go to a party, it's like you're supposed to hug and kiss every single person. So kind of breaking down some of those cultural norms, that in and of itself is another task.
Right. So you feel it's been difficult, that sort of social cultural practice for our community has been difficult during this like isolation, time of isolation or like lockdown and things like that. Yeah.
And then what I was saying earlier, the first part of some people might not know or aren't as plugged in. Or maybe they just get all of their news from Facebook and they're kind of like, oh, I don't know, like I didn't think it was a big deal. So maybe some people don't have the masks and once you point it out, they're willing to get one.
From your experience or your work, the work that you do, your job, your current job, how do you feel is that our community, the Latino community, has been affected by it most?
I mean, I know from reading the news that rates are higher amongst Latinos and Black individuals. But yeah, I think the isolation part of it, it affects people's mental health. If they are trying to stick to those things as a community that is very loving and wants to get together, it's difficult on people's mental health to do so. Right. To isolate and only have a Zoom phone call or only have certain channels of communication.
So tell me about, it could be during this time of the pandemic or in previous years, what has been some of the most difficult times of living through this, or maybe growing up in Ohio, that you can think and share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm trying to think of something like the most difficult, just like experience or.
We don't have to answer that. We can edit that out if you can't think of anything.
Okay. I mean, I think just all of these things the past couple months, having a global pandemic, also having civil rights in everyone's kind of just really, really things reaching a pinnacle point where Black lives are being murdered by our government, by the police, by systems of oppression. I think just really seeing that heightened and both of those things collide at this time is a kind of difficult, it's overused, but unprecedented moment. And I think that we kind of have to use this time as a point to make change, that everyone's lives have changed drastically. So we need to start making those changes that will actually better those other people's lives.
So now, the opposite of that, what has been your proudest moment in your life so far? And I know you're a young Latina, but what has been an accomplishment that you're really proud of so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would say graduating from OSU, I started at Ohio EPA, the internship the day after I graduated. Directly starting a career path has been something that is an accomplishment. And even just like small wins at Ohio EPA, we had a diversity an inclusion council that was started before a lot of this civil unrest that has been bubbling has been brought to the boil. We started that before all of this, but I think just bringing my perspective to that, even though it is slow and incremental change, just my voice being at the table with this Diversity and Inclusion Council, I think is something I'm proud of, that I can say the things so that people will listen and it's not seen as an angry or aggressive stereotype. Yeah.
What does Ohio mean to you as a Latina that grew up here with two different heritages but merged into one? What does that mean to grow up Latina in Ohio for you?
I think I would say that Ohio is a big, small town. That even though if it's in Cincinnati or Columbus, I'm running into maybe my waiter at a restaurant knows my parents somehow, or just certain connections that you realize we are a really small and close-knit community, and we do uplift each other no matter where you are.
Jessica, is there anything else you would like to add to this interview about your life or your experiences as a Latina in these times?
No, I think that would be it. Yeah.
Thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
Great.